Hola, bienvenidos a Encuentros del Futuro, en un tema que es del futuro, del pasado y por supuesto del presente. El feminismo, el cambio climático, la injusticia, temas todos relacionados. Estamos con mujeres pioneras en sus áreas, mujeres que han dado una lucha por mayor igualdad entre hombres y mujeres. Así es que tengo el gusto de presentarlas hoy día. Y primero comienzo con Sarah Mayer. Sara es doctora en Ecología de la Universidad de California, es investigadora asociada en la Escuela de Oceanografía de la Universidad de Washington, líder en el campo de la ciencia climática y la comunicación de la ciencia. También es una defensora, además, de las voces y del liderazgo de las mujeres, tanto en la ciencia como en la sociedad, así es que es un honor estar con ella. Sara, thank you. Really, I appreciate to be here with you. Thank you very much.
The honor is mine.
Y voy a presentar ahora entonces a Anne Oliverius, que es una abogada feminista, es una abogada británica-americana, se graduó con summa cum laude en Yale, además durante su tercer año de trabajo, imagínense, como asistente administrativa del presidente del Tribunal Supremo de los Estados Unidos. En Oxford ganó numerosos premios a lo largo de su trayectoria también. Es una de las primeras mujeres, además, que presentó casos en contra de universidades por acoso sexual. Así es que también estamos muy honradas de estar junto a ella hoy día aquí en estos diálogos del futuro, en estos encuentros del futuro. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It's an honor to be with you today. So I would like to begin asking you, what are the consequences of declaring yourself feminist today? What does it imply? What do you think?
Well, I'm the older one of all of us, so perhaps I should go first. When I was 20, you know, and everybody was a feminist when I went to Yale, of course, everybody was a feminist. And I thought that issue had been done and dusted. The whole world should be feminist. Because what are feminists? They're women who believe in the equality of women. We don't hate men. We don't have any view on that. We just love women and we want to have a shot at the world and we want to be equal.
Rights.
Just equal.
Like that.
That's all. So who would not be a feminist? It was extraordinary to me. And as I've gotten older, to hear now people say, oh, a feminist, or I'm a feminist, but I'm sort of a feminist. I don't understand sort of why. Either you are or you're not. You're pregnant or you're not. It's, you know, it's a glorious, wonderful thing to be. I would think everybody would be proud to be a feminist. My husband's a feminist. My sons are feminists. Of course.
But today, it seems it has consequences for a woman to say, I am feminist today. What do you think?
Well, when I get to talk about feminism and declaring myself a feminist, it puts me in solidarity with all the women around me. And so there are benefits and there are costs. It puts me in solidarity with all of the women and non-binary people that are a spectrum of humanity around us, right? And it recognizes the value of life and the equality of all of us. But it also puts me in a position where I'm in direct conflict with the existing hierarchies of power. And when you try to confront the existing hierarchies of power, you get pushed back by the culture. So there's a cost and a benefit to...
Because you are not the nice...
No, I'm not a good woman anymore, yeah.
Okay, and we had a feminist May in Chile last year. Young students took the street to protest against sexual harassment in schools, in university, etc. Similar to your fight. So how can we beat sexual harassment? What do you think is the good way to do it?
Well, I think the first thing one has to do is speak up, find a voice, and to say I've been sexually harassed or I'm being sexually harassed. Stand up and be proud of standing up. Because until you put your name to it, you're not really doing anything. So that's the first thing. And we have to then have mechanisms so people can actually say I'm being sexually harassed and there have to be consequences to the people who are harassing them. That's really important. We have to do that with pride and vigor and joy.
And could you give some advices to the universities, to the school, in order to have a mechanism to prevent and to fight against the the sexual harassment?
Well, I spoke at the University of Chile yesterday, and of course the school is not in session this week, so it was fairly quiet on campus. But since I've spoken, I have had dozens of private phone calls and emails from people who gave my card out and who listened to the talk. And there's tremendous energy wanting to do something. And these contacts have come not just from students, but also from administrators and from faculty, and also some male faculty. So they want to come into the modern world and they want to stop this practice. Some of the men who called me said, it's a huge problem here. Tremendous problem. We need rules and regulations, and they have to be enforced, and people have to know what the rules are so they can actually abide by them. So just the underground is telling me, wow, it's a huge problem. And if they're calling me privately, and I say, would you want to do something publicly? They're all terrified.
Can I reflect on,
please,
on this?
Please. Yes.
We know now from a report that was released in June from the United States National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, a comprehensive and quantitative report on the costs and consequences of sexual harassment in academic science. We know that the rates of harassment, sexual harassment and abuse in academic science are the highest of any other field, second only to the military.
Really?
Yeah. And as well, scientific harassment in the sciences doesn't just impact the careers and lives and bodies of women and non-binary people, but it also erodes and degrades the quality of science. It's a consequence to the entire infrastructure of the scientific investment that we do as a society. So
everyone loses.
Yes, everyone loses. And so the idea that the women that shut the universities down because of sexual harassment, we're doing it only for women's issues, is actually incomplete, because they were also there to stand up for the integrity of those institutions themselves.
Sarah, as a female scientist, have you been questioned more than a male scientist during your career?
Definitely.
In which way?
I mean, when I speak in public about science, what I receive is misogyny. So I'm told that I am angry or hysterical, hyper-emotional, unqualified, undignified, all of the ways that women are reframed as irrelevant in public, and we see that in politics, in law, in medicine, and in science. So I stand together with all of the women, my peers of women leadership across these different fields. The same thing that's happening to me is happening to women everywhere.
And you have said something about this, that people who oppose feminism present or try to present feminists as bitter and man-haters. How can we change this perception? We are not angry, we want justice.
Well, this is ignorance. I mean, people have that view who say that feminists are man-haters. It's like listening to Donald Trump talk about equality or justice. I mean, you just get hate politics. People who say that about women hating men, they're the ones who hate. I know a world of feminists around the world. I've never met a man-hater amongst us. I've met hundreds of thousands of women. This is nonsense. It doesn't exist. It's just in the men's mind, and then if some women say it because they don't know any better. It doesn't exist.
But how can we change this perception? Because we are being told have been told a lot about that. All the time we are listening about that. You are man-haters, you are bitter. So how can we change that?
That you have to let maybe go off your back a bit, just to say, you have to always say, no, it's not true, because you can't let a falsity be stated without contradicting it. But look, how do we change the world so we don't have issues? I mean, it's very issue. The big issues are equal pay for equal work. It was said today, but it's true. There's no place in the world where women are being paid equally for equal work that they do. We have to make sure that happens, and we have to make sure that on the issues of having children, which are the big issues, the men take half the responsibility. Once the men start to bear half the responsibility, that's going to change work, and it's going to make sure equality happens, and everything will change. But that's, I would think, where you put your energy, to change work places.
Focus on that.
You know, that's really what you got to do, and change childcare and those issues.
Sarah, what is the relationship between climate change, male chauvinism, and injustice? Can we tell me more details about that, because you have said that?
Yeah. So women are the primary farmers of the world. Women are on the front lines of droughts. They are responsible for feeding children and feeding their families, and they are the core of communities. And so all of the impacts of climate change, from extreme weather and economic disruption and social chaos, women pay a greater price for those because of the role that they play in society and because they are universally subjugated across the globe. So women are at the front lines, and women's bodies are also at the front lines, because when women don't have access to education and they don't have access to choices for their reproductive, their life, they make very different choices than if they are free and educated and able to make reproductive choices. So if women have the capacity to choose for themselves, often but not always, they have fewer children, often but not always, they have children later in life, and there are consequences to environmental and global systems because of the way that women's lives are different under those different systems of oppression.
And you've mentioned women need three things to achieve equality: love, money, and laughter. Why? We have laughter.
Look, if you don't have love, then you can become a bitter person, because it's really hard. There's so much systematic structural discrimination towards women. You know, you feel it all the time. You're always, the man gets the questions. It looks like the men know more than you know. And it's just a constant degradation. So, you need equality, you need respect. But if you don't have a sense of humor about this, then you really can get very depressed and unhappy and very bitter. So you want love, and you want to have a shot at life so you can show your gifts and a chance to develop those gifts. And you need to be able to laugh about the injustices, because they come at you every day, all day long.
What about law and money?
Well, money is very helpful. I have learned, as I've become very wealthy through my work, I have a business, and my view is that I make money by doing good. I only take on clients I want to represent. I know many, many excellent lawyers, but I have never met a better lawyer than I am. And I can't be bought, so I take the cases I want to take. I don't represent the mafia. I don't represent Harvey Weinstein when, he's asked for representation. I'm very, very cautious about who I represent. I give my heart. We have the best and brightest group of lawyers. We just hired the best and brightest around the world. So I don't care if they're fat, large, big, small, black, white, I don't care. But they're mostly women, it tends to be, and they work hard. We make new law. We get some of the best awards for those people who are discriminated against, for our women, particularly in the world. We get the best money. But if you don't have money as a woman, you don't have a lot of independence. So we try to get a lot of money for women in divorces, in anything that they do in discrimination cases, because it holds them back. They need money to be able to be free and independent.
It's not about to be rich, it's about to be independent.
Yes.
Okay, we are going to make a break, and after that we are going to continue with this conversation. Hacemos una pausa y volvemos a conversar con nuestras invitadas.
We humans are social animals.
Tenemos la base de datos más grande que jamás se haya tenido sobre comportamiento humano.
Necesitamos de nuevos paradigmas, de nuevas formas de hacer las cosas con procesos cada vez más participativos.
We should know that if we do want to make the world a better place, we need to take a look at ourselves and make a change.
Continuamos en este gran encuentro del futuro, en estos encuentros del futuro, con dos tremendas profesionales y además feministas, que es un gusto estar con ellas. For both of you, Virginie Despentes has said feminism has not been able to enter homes, and if it doesn't, the fight will be lost. She said, because inequality begins at birth. Or at home. What do you think?
I think it's so true. Feminism is something that has to be practiced in relationships in families, between lovers, between partners. It has to originate, and this is the deep work of actually being a feminist, this is not a public act, right? I have to transcend all the boundaries into my private life. And one thing I think about the relation with feminism and intimacy in partnership is often that women's pleasure, women's sexual pleasure, has been left out of any importance in our sexual lives. And it's terrifying to men and to have this conversation in public.
To say what I want.
Right,
yeah.
to say what you want and to have the intimacy, the kind of sexual and intimate relationships that you really want. That is where actually feminism as an adult woman, that's where my feminism originates, right? Because I have to have equitable sex in order to have a life that also has all these lines of equitability and a feminist philosophy. So it's so critical to see how feminism can seep into all these different places, and also how much joy and happiness and connection comes from when I'm honest about who I am and what I want and how to have relationship.
And at the same time, we don't have equal pay.
Yeah.
We don't have equal work inside, in home,
Right.
at home, because we have less time for our free time, to study, to say, okay, I'm gonna take that job,
Yeah.
because at home, my husband is gonna take my partner, my husband, is gonna
Right.
take the responsibility, because it has his
Right.
responsibility.
Yeah.
It is his responsibility.
It shows you the politics of feminism inside of homes, right? When the balance of labor is not equal, then women's time is not valued. And we need to be valued because we are obviously equal to any man and any non-binary person, that we are all on equal footing.
What do you think, Anna, about that?
Well, it's interesting, this notion of sex, people don't discuss it much. And particularly being in Chile, I've heard some references to men's stronger sexual drive and men's needs, because we've been discussing issues like rape. And I sit there and I think, what is he talking about? Men don't have stronger sexual drives than women. And, you know, it's like a funny joke. You know, men may have sex once, twice a night, okay, 3 times if they're young and vigorous. But a woman can have an orgasm all night long. And she's clearly a very...
More than one.
literally all night long. And you know, and women don't get educated on how to do that. They don't get educated about female ejaculation, which is fabulous. I think there's not enough female sex education. I think if there was, there'd be shock.
It's like a mystery, they don't know.
I think
It
it's still
is.
a great mystery.
Yeah.
The education is coming from porn. And in porn, of course, porn sex is not about women. It's about the hatred and vilification of women, the degradation of women. It's not about how you please a woman. And so no man is going to learn to be a good lover by watching porn, certainly. And women are really different. I mean, I think they have fabulous sexual drives, much more powerful than men. As great as needs as men, no, if not greater needs in some respects. And so I find this really quite extraordinary, but women sort of know this amongst ourselves, but they don't say it at, you know, if I have a dinner party, people don't say that at the dinner party. It's not said with men present.
Can you imagine what it's like to be a woman in Chile? Because it's different from United States. So in Chile, can you imagine how it's like to be a woman? Which are our difficulties, because we are a different country from you came from.
I think, I mean, I can't speak for women in Chile, right? But every woman that I have met here in the last week, we have this sisterhood and this parallel experience. And, you know, our bodies, our hearts, our minds are the same. Our needs are the same. And so even obviously the history of Chile and we're in the shadow of a dictatorship, all the consequences of the politics that have manifested in the last 50 years, all of those have consequences to women's lives. So I think about the lack of access to abortion for women in Chile, the funding and promotion of higher birth rates in Chile. All I can see when I think of those policies is the pain and degradation and the suffering and the shame of women that are experiencing these very oppressive systems. So my love and solidarity is for the women in Chile, and that I'm with them.
You know, I often been told by authorities, congressmen, politicians, whoever, that male chauvinism and feminism are the same are one and the same thing. Has happened to you that?
Well, male chauvinism is about men feeling they're special, they're the best, they have privilege, and they exercise their privilege. Female, feminism, that's about women being equal to men. It's about having a full life on the same footing. There's nothing that's similar between the two.
No. But in Chile, not always the people know about that.
That's ridiculous, right? Because men have been running the world and subjugating women for thousands of years. And men run every natural resource agency on the planet, and they make comprehensively the decisions that dictate our lives. So the idea that chauvinism and feminism on equal footing erases all of the history of our cultures that have gotten us up to the present day. So it's ridiculous. That they would say that.
To listen to that.
Well, it's a misconception, and it's what it is an erasure of the lives and experiences of women. And instead of erasing the experiences of people, we should reveal them for what they are.
And with the new technologies, new crimes have emerged that affect women more than men, such as revenge porn or cyberbullying. How can we fight against this? What do you think?
Well, we need to have laws that regulate the internet, certainly. The internet was, at first seen to be the great hope for future freedom and to give chances to people. What's happened, of course, it's become really also a vehicle to put terror into people's hearts, to damage people, to threaten them, to hurt them, and some people actually, kill themselves because of what's happened on the internet. We need to regulate that. 100 years ago in the United States, individual states said that they didn't have the tools to combat crime because of the new technology. And that new technology then, 100 years ago, were cars and telephones. And it just defeated the whole criminal justice system that we had. So the United States developed a crime agency called the FBI. Now that Federal Bureau of Investigation worked for a period of time, but now we need a cybercrime department. And it's got to be probably deeply funded. We have to educate our police. I mean, now if you say that I've just been, my naked pictures are on Twitter and you call a police officer, often you're going to get, what's Twitter? What does that mean? They have no idea. And then they tell you, well, get off the internet. Well, our lives live on the internet. We can't get off the internet. And it's not our fault. And they say, well, why did you take the picture that got shown anyway? Well, actually, because I love somebody and it was an act of trust and love, and that person then abused it. So we have to change our thinking, but there has to be recourse, and the social media sites themselves, Google, Facebook, Instagram, they have to be liable. They have to react instantly to taking this stuff off that is hurting people. They can't just post the stuff online.
Sarah, you've said that in order to face climate change, we need empathy towards people who are marginalized by this change. And you've said that women are leaders in this. Could you explain me that? Why we are, maybe it's because we've also been discriminated.
Let me tell you a story about an indigenous woman that I met from the Arctic, an Inupiat woman who spoke with me about climate change. What you may not know is that in the United States, indigenous women are murdered at 10 times the national average, 10 times,
Wow.
and that 92% of indigenous women will be sexually violated, and 78% of those women will be violated by a man outside their tribe. So what this woman said to me was that because of the erasure of women's pain and violation, specifically indigenous women, and then the consequences to indigenous lives because of the onslaught of climate warming and climate chaos, and she said is that we need to connect the violence being done to women to the violence being done to the planet, because there's the same concept of power and disregard. The way that women's bodies are used and disregarded is the same way that we are using and disregarding this natural planet. And that's
It's power to destroy, not to build.
to use and to hold in power and then to put into the garbage. And that's a version of feminism called ecofeminism, which is to connect women's bodies to the land itself.
Finally, for both of you, if you were president or prime minister, it would be great. What measures will you implement we can make the campaign. What measure will you implement to promote equality among men and women?
Well, I think one of the first things I would do is to put in legislation so that when people have children, that you encourage them with tax breaks and all sorts of monetary incentives so that the man takes off, whatever period of time that the woman is allowed to take off, not at the same time, but if he doesn't take it off, then he loses money. So you make it a real economic incentive. So every smart person is going to take off time to be with their kid. And you make that law, and that will change things automatically because then the men start cooking, the men start cleaning, take care of the kids when the woman has to go back to work.
Yes.
You see it in Sweden all the time on their own business. The men are taking those baby carriages and walking them in the parks. At the negotiating tables when I'm there are women in full-fledged positions and they're treated with respect and they're negotiating. It's a very different society. It's a fabulous society. They take care of each other.
Real change.
The other thing I do pretty quickly is to make sure there's equal pay for equal work and that you've got to actually have transparency. So when people apply for jobs, there's been this fabulous study from Finland that's just been published. They have people applying for jobs and they block out on the resumes any indication of gender. They also block out any names because they found in Finland that if Muslims, for instance, or foreigners applied, maybe they got 8% of the jobs. And when women and men applied, the men got most of the jobs. After they blocked out the identities, so you couldn't tell, 82% of the jobs offered were to women, and 48% went to foreigners with Muslim names. It's a whole different recruitment system. So we need to put a system in like that that's really fair and not just, jobs for the boys. It has to be a fair meritocracy. And then we have to figure out how to promote in that system so that's also fair.
And you?
I completely agree with Anne, 100%, and I will vote for you for president.
I'll vote for you.
Or I'll be your vice president. I think women's bodily autonomy is fundamental. So the comprehensive access to reproductive rights. I am sick and tired of men telling me what I can and cannot do with my body. This includes abortion, because when women have the ability to make decisions about when they have children, they can make fundamentally different decisions for how they care and steward their own lives and the lives of the existing children that they have. So I think as I have grown older, I think that the ability to have an abortion when and where and how you want to as a woman is a fundamental human right and a marker of a free society. When that doesn't exist across societies, you see all the downstream consequences to the lives and voices of women.
Sarah, and I really appreciate to have this conversation with you. Thank you for joining us. It was an honor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Y ustedes, muchas gracias por habernos acompañado en este nuevo Encuentro del Futuro.